What, man? How's it going, bro?
Can you hear it?
What?
Can you hear the music?
Hear it. Yeah. Jamming over there, huh?
Well, there's a meaning behind that song. I don't know if you know it. I was a kid, and I remember watching boxing with my father, and Macho Camacho came out to that song. And I was like, that is so cool that you have a Latino boxer coming out to salsa, at least the music that I loved back then. You know, it was before Oscar De La Hoya came out with mariachi music or Cesar Chavez. This was Macho Camacho coming out to Ahora Vengo Yo. And I start that because when we first met, we talked about ring entrances and the significance. And while it impacted me, I saw you put some thought behind it. So I always liked that song. I liked it when Fania did it because it was a statement. And I think that Macho spoke specifically on that Ahora Vengo Yo as his ring entrance. So it was pretty dope.
I love that. I love that because I'm actually just writing about this fighter from Brooklyn, who his name is Chris Colbert, and he's from Brooklyn. His trainer is Aureliano Sosa, who's a Mexican American cat from New York, and he enters this last fight. He entered the Tomatoes "Remember My Name," and so like it's very interesting. Like that song that Macho came into the ring, it's like letting the world know like take notice of who I am and like take me in and I'm here, whether you like it or not. The world is going to acknowledge that I'm here. And I think Camacho and all these other fighters, what they do so brilliantly is with their culture of hip hop or of like salsa and the roots of salsa to make those messages very creatively.
Yeah, it's funny. It's not the way I want to start the interview. However, thank you for coming on the show. So I was watching you said hip hop and culture, and I'm going to go right to the point with what you just inspired, is that I think today's society is so caught up on extremes that I saw a video of Macho talking about what he saw in Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson had wrong people around him. And obviously Macho used the N-word. He said he's got too many, ends around him when he shouldn't be, because this is a business. And that's the problem Mike is going to have, because people are going to look at them and judge them. But he used terms that you and I would, grow up with, and it was right. That's why one of the reasons Mike was so, took a down road spiral was his group around him. But I don't think that message today would have resonated the way Macho had the balls to say it on national TV. Because again, the culture, certain part of the culture would be like, that's not right. You can't use that. But he grew up in El Barrio, which is, I'm sure you've been to New York. El Barrio is Latino and Black. It's East Harlem and Harlem.
Right.
So I think, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, Camacho grew up in Spanish Harlem, like you said, and I always recall a story of when Danny Garcia's father, Angel Garcia, used the N-word in reference to Keith Thurman in building up their fight, and he says something to the extent of he used the N-word in its cultural context, but outside of a community of confidence. And what I mean by that is that I'm not, that word is a very loaded word, and I think that when we are like, I'm a light-skinned Latino, and if I had grown up using that word with my friends, it would have contained a particular meaning. Some of my friends that are Puerto Rican from New York say like they'll use that term for only people who they would be willing to die and kill for. Like it's a strong word. It's a strong bond.
What did you use? You used outside of the confidence?
Outside of a community of confidence, like having like trust and having like confianza, having like an understanding, right? And so when Angel Garcia used that to reference Keith Thurman, he didn't use it in a way that was like the ER version of the N-word, right? It was like common vernacular that's used in a context of confidence, right? A community of confidence. And so the media was quick to jump on him and problematize his use of it, but not understanding that dynamic and that nuance that word is used in its cultural context. It's not a right or wrong thing. It's problematic if used, especially in that context where people are not aware of the connection.
No, you're right. You're right. That's a Las Vegas press conference, and you're talking down to Thurman versus Camacho was a byproduct and talking about Tyson. But I just thought that it was like it was cool because you saw boxers analyzing boxers in that community of confidence.
Right.
Not AP media to a promoter, a father. Yeah. Okay, good. Anyways, I like this discussion, bro. I like it.
Yeah. I think Camacho too. I mean, when I've looked at like his family and I mean, with the history of Puerto Ricans and Mexicans and Central Americans of mestizaje and a lot of racial mixing, I also want to say that like Camacho's mother is Afro-Puerto Rican.
Yeah. You know, again, we got to use these proper terms. Listen, the parts of Nicaragua, the blue fields, like Costa Atlántica, if you talk to a Nicaragüense, community of confidence, allá están los negros de la Costa Atlántica. They're describing, just like when the Chinese migrated to a certain part of the country, ahí la comunidad china, los chinos, you know. And so I like what you just said, the community of confidence. I'm sure it exists because you're an intelligent guy. But I think that needs to be put out there more to help our people understand. You know where I lean on that. But I want our people to be more woke, que no sean tan, you know, easily breakable, to be able to have a conversation. But we'll go back to that community of confidence. I like that, bro. So talk to me. What have you been up to? You said you are writing more. Talk to me what you've been up to.
I've been grinding, just analyzing my over 20 in-depth interviews with professional boxers and boxing designers and hip hop artists and corrido writers. I'm just analyzing all those elements that make up a ring entrance. So just been writing. I have 3 chapters in my dissertation, almost complete. And so my work is basically about, like you said, ring entrances, but going like building on the barbershop conversations, right? When you go to the barbershop and you just it's for men and like masculinity, like that's a great space to be in, right? The barbershop, talking with your barber, talking with other clients. But one of the conversations I remember I've had in the barbershop and with friends, just like kicking it, you know, is like who's got the dopest ring entrance, you know, in boxing history. And 9 out of the 10 times I get that is Mike Tyson's ring entrance, because he would come in with no socks, black boots, you know, black shorts. And so I loved how people would explain why that was their favorite. And so ever since I was a little kid, like you mentioned Camacho, my first fight was in '92, and it was Camacho. The reason that I got into ring entrances was because Camacho's ring entrance was like a show. It was super spectacular. And so I was like, these guys are artists, they're innovators, they're creatives. And so I've focused on sports for my scholarship as a doctoral researcher. And I focused on the aspect of sports, entertainment, the artistic, the creative, the elements that bring in music, like hip hop, salsa, merengue, whatever it is that they choose to come into.
Yeah.
It comes from somewhere, right? From their lived experiences and their culture. And so my work right now is just excavating and digging deep to see what these boxers are trying to communicate.
Yeah. I would say, to me, it's kind of like foods, whatever you're in the mood for. So yeah, it was dope to see a Latino as a young kid. Ahora vengo yo with the statement. The Tyson, looking back now, were probably more deeper than I thought. Mm-hmm. But I would say, because I'm, you know, immature and I love dance music, I mean, come on, Nasim Hamed, man, he would just, what the hell was, but it was so dope because he would put house music and he would just dance and come in and he would get into the mind of the opponent before he even got in. And it wasn't until, shout out to Earl Watson for introducing us. It wasn't until I got to talk to you that you further refined that. But we'll talk about that. I looked you up. This is what I like about you. Many things is that we met under no pre-notion, quién éramos nosotros, right? Go to UCLA, Earl goes, yo, we got to come into this, Latino American Studies class. My boy is teaching it. I'm thinking, my boy, whatever, you were deep. And to be so young at such a prestigious school was awesome. And what we talked about, because I got to spend time with the students while you were speaking on Jim Crow and when it was dope. But you have a PhD, okay? Props to you on that, PhD candidate. You've been featured on ESPN, Fox Sports, Bleacher Report, CNN, the AP, New York Times, Washington Times, USA Today. I can keep on going on. Talk to me about how that experience was and how you got to that level of writing, because there are a lot of people that have deep thoughts that can contribute to the shaping of our future or the movement. But there are resources like what you've done, where you're going to talk to us about. I always tell people get into op-eds. Blogging is kind of old school. I think that they should go into, these kind of interviews. I don't think that this format will ever get old. I think that the content, as long as it's fresh and dope and innovative, I don't care. It's like saying a book gets old. Reading books, it doesn't get old. So how does it feel? How did you do it? And talk to us about your experience on being featured on just those major media outlets I just went over.
Yeah, I mean, I got to go all the way back to like just my childhood. My dad's the one that introduced me to sports. 92, the first fight, Camacho and Chavez. And then 2 years later, my dad, enrolls me into soccer. I was never really like a good student in high school. I was a 2.9 GPA student. Didn't meet the eligibility requirements for like the school I ended up at as an undergrad, UC Irvine. But my dad enrolled me in soccer. I realized I was good at soccer. I got a Division I scholarship to play soccer. So sport has always been like central and core to my identity. I have a special bond with sport.
Yeah.
And then I got to college and I was introduced to Latino American studies, Chicano studies, Black studies, ethnic studies. And I fell in love with that. The material making me really like, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Higher Learning.
Of course.
Yeah. So like that scene where the professor talks to the track and field runner and he says, did you come to college to learn how to live life? Or did you come for a degree? And I feel like my experience as a college student shaped me to learn how to understand myself in life. And
yeah.
I've used that now in the present to fuse ethnic studies and issues about power, issues about injustice, issues about representation with sports. And it's a unique fusion where a lot of people haven't used ethnic studies to analyze sports and sports politics.
Give me an example of that. I think it's interesting because you were talking, again, when I was at UCLA listening to you speak, it was always about the history, right? And I think it's important for people to understand the history, but give me an example of how you take that history and apply it to better understanding now.
Absolutely. So like back in the World War II era, for example, everybody knows about the zoot suit.
Yeah.
Right. So Black and brown folks were wearing zoot suits. Filipino cats were wearing zoot suits. And it was a time during the war where like they intentionally had a policy, a law that restricted excessive use of material that was being used to make zoot suits. And it was targeting like Black and brown poor folks who would wear them. And the law was basically saying like there's a rationing right now of that material, so you can't use it. But it was really because the people who are wearing the zoot suits, Black and brown folks, were seen as deviants, as aggressors. And so I use that idea of like, if that suit was political during that time in history, because who wore it, what does it mean for then fighters and boxers to use that idea of what is called style politics that uses their body to express a politics? So going back to Chris Colbert, right? His outfit is intentionally created through his imagination and his vision. He tells Aaron Harrison, his designer from the Body Kit Custom store, to make him a suit, an outfit that communicates this message that he found on his trunks, which said, justice to all minorities that have been killed through police brutality or police violence, right? Police killings. And so this message was very intentional. A Black fighter from Brooklyn is wearing a suit that has this political message that's very clear about his politic, then I try to connect it to that same theory of like the zoot suit and how in that moment, because of the context of the political climate, wearing that suit renders a Black person, a brown person, male or female, a deviant or a transgressor because they're going against the grain. And so
Yeah,
this is also going against the grain because you're not supposed to. The norm is you don't allow a state entity like law enforcement, but he's courageous enough to show the world that.
And what you're saying back then, that example still exists in today's day. And now think about it. I guess I like your clarity on that. I think it'll always exist to a certain extent, right? Because that ring entrance you described is what the NBA uses with social media, right? Unfortunately, boxers box once a year, maybe, just because of the sport. But I think to erase or to rewrite, we should never erase, because we have to look at what we've overcome to better appreciate and understand where to go forward, and that we don't have it so bad on certain days. But I think that with social media, I think that we can rewrite that, correct? Because come on, tattoos before were for ex-cons. Now the barista at Starbucks wears it. Beanie. Before you'd see motorcycles, Hell's Angels. Now it's a passion. So I think, do you think that, in your opinion, we have some great opportunities to rewrite because of social media moving forward in the future?
Absolutely. I think social media, for just in general, downtrodden and like marginalized peoples, like working class people, like social media, like Instagram, Twitter, has made it accessible for people to utilize their voice, to communicate messages and reach like wider audiences. And so in boxing, I think about how the role of social media could also be very kind of a threat to like a promoter, because their role promote fighter, but with Instagram, the fighters kind of taking their agency and their platform in new directions without always getting the help of a promoter, right? And so
yeah, because even the
great for them.
Yeah, just because, no, I agree. Just because the promoter, was a good boxer doesn't mean they're going to have the best interest of the future of boxing and the business. So I think one of the examples you get by that is Ryan Garcia.
Right.
Now we have to see. So Oscar did reply back saying, just because you have followers doesn't mean they'll buy tickets. Right. And that is still an ongoing, over the last 7-8 years, the social media influencers we haven't had enough to confirm that followers translates into revenue, sales, pay-per-view buys, right? Exactly. Canelo is more active, but it seems like they're in the same management. So I'm kind of seeing a trend,
Yeah.
So
yeah. I was just Ryan Garcia. I think his thing is like, he has the following, and he has like, I've been to fights of his in Southern California, and me and my friend Boy were like, yo, like there was more people at a Friday night fight for Ryan Garcia at the StubHub Center, or now Dick Center, than there was the next day for a Triple G fight. And Triple G is like, he's already kind of on his way out, but he's a big thing.
He's a purist. He's a purist. Where, right. And what was the ticket price in this example?
I can't remember what the ticket prices were, but I don't think they priced the Triple G fight that high, because it was a last minute replacement, because that's when Canelo tested positive for clenbuterol. So they had to get last minute replacement, change it from Vegas to that arena in Carson. But what's interesting about Ryan is that he has the following. But right now, I think in the boxing world, the critics are still saying, okay, let's see him really prove himself inside the ring. He's got the skills, but does he have the skills to up to fight elite fighters and still have the same success that he's having against, B-level fighters that he's been fighting so far? So
that's correct. So, talk to me about your teaching. You're teaching Latino American, Chicano American Studies in UCLA. Tell me your role.
Yeah, so at UCLA, I'm currently on a Cota Robles Fellowship, which means that I've been given a whole year to just work on my writing. So right now I'm not teaching, I'm just working on my writings and my research.
COVID too, right?
Yeah, but when I do teach, I've taught the intro series to Chicano Studies, Chicano music. I TA'd that class. And for me personally, like I love research, I love writing, but for me, just like research and writing, I have to be on the ground with the boxers, with the trainers, in the gyms. I have to be in the community. It's very, an important obligation. And for me, being in the classroom is also and part of being an educator, because that is being also with the community, at least the campus community. And so when I teach, I love to be in the classroom. I call my pedagogy, which is basically your teaching philosophy, I call it scholartainment. And I think you're gonna like this, bro, because scholartainment builds on KRS-One's idea of edutainment, in the sense that if he doesn't have hip hop music that's both entertaining, catchy, and fly and dope, then people are not going to listen to the message, because KRS-One was all about the message of making people aware of social political issues that were happening, of history. But his thing was like, if I'm not educating while entertaining, then people aren't going to listen, people aren't going to follow. And so for me, if I'm not entertaining and engaging students in the classroom, hence scholartainment, failing my students. That's the bar I set for myself when I enter the classroom. And I think you saw it for that 1 hour when I was using social media, when I was using video, when I was engaging the students.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Listen, I've been, as a young kid, dragged everywhere my mom wanted me to go. So my pet peeve is sitting around listening to someone who's just not educating, not engaging, because I look at that as egotistical. If a speaker says 8 to 5 and it's 5:07, that's selfish on that person, because you don't value our time. I did find your lecture entertaining, and it was engaging based on that formula. So what KRS-One is saying is pretty dope, because that's how you take pride in not how much you know, but how much you can teach. Mm-hmm. You know, and I dabbled in martial arts, you know, black belt, but and it wasn't, I'm not proud so much that I could whoop ass. I'm proud that at one point the master made me be an instructor, and it taught me a very valuable lesson. What I've used to propel my career today is having that mindset. It's not how much I know, it's not how much I can whoop ass, it's how much I can teach you to defend yourself. It's how much I can teach you to develop that confidence and to have that discipline. And most importantly, a lost art is respect. I know so many of my friends who have just become so extreme on both sides. But I think it's because of that skill set that Master Yu taught me through martial arts, Taekwondo, that I actually try to take the time to understand them. I'm not quick to judge, because nobody's fucking perfect.
Absolutely.
But in a society today, if I disagree with, certain points on each side, I laugh, because people are like, you're this and you're that. I'm like, no, it's common fucking sense. That's not right. You know what I mean? When's the last time in the last 10 years do you see a picture of this person with someone who looks like you? And so I like what you're saying. The engagement part, you take pride in it. You're a young guy. So what are you, let's go into some fun stuff. Pet peeves, because you're a deep dude. Pet peeves in Latinos.
Pet peeves in Latinos. Shoot, that's a good one. I think my biggest pet peeve just with my journey is that we don't tell each other we love each other enough.
I love it. Yeah, well, how old are you?
I'm 35.
Happy belated birthday.
Thank you.
I will tell you this.
Oh, 36, my bad. 30.
You already did.
I gotta get used to saying 30.
I will tell you this. I ask you that because I tell my mom I love her 4 or 5 times a day. But my father, because era un karateca, estricto, but I can't even say he was strict, because I can count on my hands how many times he hit me growing up, and I wasn't an angel. But I have never told my father, I love you. But we know we love each other. There's different ways. I think it's just because my father raised me duro, So I like that. It's your pet peeve, not telling each other we love each other. If anything, this pandemic has taught us is to love more, and appreciate. Your pet peeves in society.
Pet peeve in society, not enough nuance sometimes. And I think it's like, part of it is the cancel culture. Part of it is the labeling people that you're XYZ. Mm-hmm. And going back to my teachings, I tell my students is like, if you're gonna say that someone is something, whether it's sexist, racist, homophobic, whatever it might be, that we follow it with an analysis
Yes.
an examination. And like you said earlier, like also, I'm also like, and it's easier said than done, but I think one of the most important rules when it comes to doing multicultural, intercultural, diversity and inclusion work is this ability to not pass judgment right away.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's because me saying that you're like that you're racist or whatever and not following it up with some kind of analysis, even if it's just internal,
Yeah.
is lazy.
100%.
Honest and real about that. It really requires. So I think it's the nuance and really trying to see and understand at a deeper level. I guess sometimes it's not easy because maybe the person that you're dealing with, you know that they're not going to engage with you in a healthy, back and forth, constructive way, and so you move on, right? But I think one of the societal things, especially on social media, I mean, you can only say so much 300-word or character text via Twitter. So I think the nuance and really unpacking things is,
got it. And that kind of leads into your pet peeves in politics. What's your pet peeves in politics? Did you vote in this election?
I did. Yeah, I did.
I think it's important that our viewers understand that we are citizens like anybody else, contributing as good human beings, and we vote. Because I always think, and I tell people, don't expect the country or the government to do the right thing. Right. Expect them to do the smart thing. When we vote, doesn't matter who we vote, when we vote, then they will do more things for us. It's just like, anything else in life. So what's your pet peeve in politics?
I think my pet peeve was like no different than when Barack Obama became president, where people were like, oh, the world is going to miraculously just change a better place. It's like, it doesn't happen overnight. Same thing with Biden winning this election. My pet peeve, that people are like, again, like things are going to get better now that Trump's out of office. Everything's just going to happen overnight and shit's going to get better. But so my pet peeve is like this lack of understanding maybe, or sometimes people just add too much significance to an event without thinking like, now the work starts in the sense of like, how are we going to push Kamala and Biden to do some of the right things with legislation, with policy changes, with education. I think the big one right now is education, like the loans to being part in it, especially for working class students, to be able to like that they would be otherwise paying their loans back to invest it in property, to invest it in their own businesses, etc. And so,
that's a second interview I'm going to do with you on that, because the forgiveness of loan. I love that you're touching on a couple of things. One, I came during the 80s, so we grew up self-responsibility, never took advantage of the system or never free handouts. That's the way my parents raised me, because it was a different president and in Reagan. So I'm a proud Republican, but I voted for Biden because no financial break for me is worth just the mistreatment of the future of our people. And I want to get back to what I mean by that. This is funny you say Obama, because I actually created a shirt. Mm-hmm. I can become lo que yo deseo, because we Latinos didn't have an Obama. One of the things that I heard when Obama became president was that Jay-Z said now it was cool for the Black community because now they see something they can aspire to be besides a ball player, a rapper, or a drug dealer. Right. We don't have that in Latinos. Going back to the Biden administration, I have my own friends who, I'm applauding the appointment of a Latino to oversee the pandemic. Right. And he's a key position. So he's not some, bullshit position. And then the other one just got appointed yesterday to oversee the education and reopening of schools. We want it for the greater good of the country to succeed. We want the pandemic to be managed, less people to die. We want schools to reopen safely because that's the future of our country. But I still have some friends that are not even giving them a shot. So they should do it for the greater good of the country. But people like you and I, and would you agree that we're rooting for them because they're Latinos?
I think in terms of like representation, that's because like with Kamala, with Barack Obama, I think that seeing people in high places is part of like, it's a representational politics issue. Like it's good to see people in those positions, especially for kids to then be able to see themselves in those positions in the future. But then it's like, well, what are they about? What's their politics? What is their agenda? How does it align with mine? How does it not align with mine? And if it doesn't align with mine, and if I'm not in agreement with it, how do I then push those elected officials to, if it's, especially if it's an issue about justice and equity, how do I push them, or how do we collectively push them to those ends, right? Because government officials at the end of the day work for the people.
Yeah, it's a blur line, because based on what you're saying, it's like, okay, good representation, but how do you align with my views, and how do you align with what's important in the country? I want the country to reopen up, the economy, the schools, and if it happens to be led by a Latino in that position, then I applaud them. But I think sometimes people let their political affiliation or beliefs define them who they are before the representation part. You get what I'm saying?
Right. Like they are informed by the person's politics before their ethnic or racial identity, or
but based on what you're saying, the way you put it, I get it. I get it, because you're saying, okay, it's cool for representation, but that's not it. You've actually got to perform because you work for the people.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's why maybe for me, like that's why I was like in the 2008 elections, and right here, it's different because it's Biden, so it's not an issue of representation for a black or brown candidate, right? But for Barack Obama, when he became president, like, it is an exciting moment. I'm happy about the representation because this is historic. But what your policies are, especially around at that time, and even today, like I'm still very much about immigration issues. So when he became president, it's like, okay, what is his policy going to be around immigration reform? DACA came like towards the end of his second presidency, and then people from the inside in politics were communicating to me that a lot of the things that Barack did around immigration issues had to be forced by advocates of immigration issues. It wasn't really coming from his own agenda. So when I think about representation,
he didn't do much for permanent solution. And I believe as the numbers continue to grow, as social media and voting influxes, it could pass under this administration. And that says a lot. But I don't take anything away from Obama. Listen, you look at ring entrances, you look at the way he is managing what he puts the content out, the family life, no scandal, class with a little bit of sarcasm because he still shows his woke. He can still shoot a three. There's a lot to be learned from him, even if you're on the other side. And that's why I want our people to say, don't worry about if he's a Democrat or Republican. Look at him as a person.
Yeah,
this is a kid who grew up in Chicago and became president of the United States with everything against him. And the same goes for the broken system and how a reality show producer can become president of the United States, right? And I think he did. Let me tell you what Donald Trump did do good. I know you're probably thinking, what the fuck's he gonna say? He did good. He did good by sacudiendo la sábana and showing the crumbs of the ignorance we have in this country. The ignorance that we have amongst our circles. You see, I don't use the word racism because it takes a lot for me to use that, because like you're saying, analysis, data, cases. Y es lo que hizo bien is sacudir la sábana like we did as kids, because there was crumbs. There was things that didn't belong there. And he exposed the ignorance that I believe we always need to know where we stand, because it helps us make better choices. I'm also, very outspoken on sometimes like, yo, try to win. AOC, calm down a little bit. You see me, right? Calm down, because the goal is not to be right. It's to win for the greater good of the people. And for what she's achieved at such a young age, that's awesome. And how she now manages through, passing policies for her people, in this administration, we want her to succeed. And it's like, slow your roll, but we want Latinos on both sides, we have and that stuff. So next question to you, person dead or alive, who would you love to have dinner with?
Who, dead or alive, who I would love to have dinner with? Dead, it has to be, can I pick two?
Yeah, do it.
All right, I'm gonna pick two. It's better to eat in company than in small groups. But I would love to, because going back to boxing, I would love to have dinner with the great Jack Johnson, and Muhammad Ali, because those two, like Muhammad Ali is because of Jack Johnson. And for those that don't know who Jack Johnson is, that are viewing this, especially those that like surfer music, I'm not talking about Jack Johnson, the music artist from like,
Yeah,
I don't know. Every time I go on Google and I type Jack Johnson to look up some stuff that I need to about Jack Johnson, the boxer, that dude pops up. And so that's another pet peeve of mine, that Jack Johnson, the artist, pops up before Jack Johnson, the boxer.
Yeah, exactly.
Jack Johnson in 1908 became the first black heavyweight champion of the world when the racial divide was in the sand. Black fighters couldn't compete, at least the top black fighters couldn't compete for the world title. And Jack Johnson became the first ever to do that. But the reason why I have dinner with him is unapologetic. He was a dandy. He was like dating and married multiple white women in a time, Jim Crow, where like it was not the society's norm. Like that shit could get you killed. That shit could get you hurt. Race riots happened after Jack Johnson defended his title against multiple white hopes, which is a term that Jack London wrote about as a journalist. Like who's gonna dethrone and put Jack Johnson back in his place, basically, in the racial hierarchy. So he lived in a time and did things unapologetically to the beat of his own drum. And Muhammad Ali credits him for having learned a lot from him. So I would love to have dinner with two renegades, two rebels of boxing history.
No, that's dope. No, definitely Muhammad is one that I would even consider, because you only have one or two in your case, right? Because he was at the elite of his sport profession when he made a conscious decision and even excelled. You look at Mike Tyson's podcast. He said the other day, if I wouldn't have lost to Buster Douglas, he wouldn't be where he's at today. Very wealthy in business, being able to talk the experiences, being alive. And so I think that in some ways, Muhammad became a legend even more because he had that conscious mind of wokeness, not just the boxing ability, right? Okay, so last day on earth, one meal, what would it be?
One meal. Ooh. I think I just answered this question a while ago. I would love, I don't know what the cut is called, but it's that steak that the Salt Bay dude makes.
Yeah. I mean, he does the ribeye.
There you go.
The tomahawk. Yeah. So it would be, that's one of your favorites. You love steak.
Straight ribeye. I don't eat it all the time, but when I do, it's got to be a good one. So I would have that ribeye with some mashed potatoes and some asparagus and like a nice red Chilean wine.
I like that. Oh, so you love wine too?
I love wine.
I'm going to connect you with some awesome Latino winemakers in Napa, bro. Listen, I want to thank you for your time today. The interviews, I like to say that I pick pretty cool people who have some cool stuff, but this was better than I expected. We went through a whole realm, and we'll definitely get you for two or more, because there's the things to elaborate. The whole concept of this show is to have conversations around, I think, our topics that are current, but also how to become more woke, and you're one of the wokest cats, bro. So thank you again for your time, my brother. I look forward to seeing you once COVID's over.
Thank you so much for your kind words, and shout out to Earl for connecting us. It's a great community to be a part of, and you're a great brother. So I thank you for bringing me on the show and all the kind words you put out there, man. I appreciate that.
You stay safe. I'll see you soon, bro.
Likewise. I'll talk to you soon, man.
All right, my man.